For decades, we have been defined by numbers and figures. But looking forward, we focus on what matters most: the hours, minutes, seconds. A moment to leap into the things we love. A chance to never give up on our passions. A time when nothing can stop us. An occasion to rise up to the impossible. Because of you.
Hello and welcome. Good morning to those of you in the Americas. Good afternoon and evening to you in Europe, Africa and the Middle East. My name is Nick Stern, Professor of Economics at the London School of Economics. Thank you for joining us for this conversation on clean mobility, with a focus on the cross-sector partnerships and leading innovations which can pave the way forward to a sustainable future. I would like to acknowledge and offer thanks to our host, Hyundai Motor Company, and to our esteemed panelists, whom it's my pleasure to introduce. Let me first welcome Jan Vapavori, the Mayor of the world-class sustainable city of Helsinki, and a former Finnish Minister of Economic Affairs. Hello and welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much for your kind words and excellent.
And then let me welcome from Dusseldorf in Germany, Andreas Schierenbeck, who's the CEO of the international energy company Uniper and a member of Germany's National Hydrogen Council. Thank you and greetings, Andreas.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
And joining us from Seoul, South Korea, is Dr. Se-Hun Kim, Senior Vice President and Head of the Fuel Cell Center at Hyundai Motor Group. Dr. Kim, a pleasure to see you again, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure to participate in this meeting.
Very good. Thank you, all three of you, for coming. Now, before we dive into the substance around our topic today, let me try to spend a moment grounding the conversation in the climate crisis and what is at stake. The unmanaged climate change, and at the moment we're headed for well over 3 degrees centigrade in increase in average global surface temperature relative to the 19th century. Unmanaged climate change involves enormous risks. 3 degrees centigrade is something we have not seen on this planet for 3 million years, when sea levels were 10 to 20 meters higher than now. It would transform where we could live. Hundreds of millions, perhaps billions, would have to move, and we risk severe conflict, and it's essentially existential risk for many. The stakes are enormous. We have to move very quickly on this. We have to achieve net zero emissions to stabilize concentration, to stabilize temperatures by mid-century. The earlier we go to net zero, the lower the temperature at which we stabilize, and for 1.5 degrees, it should be mid-century. And on the way, we have to halve emissions globally in this decade. This is very challenging, but if we do it well, as I hope we will, with the guidance of people like this panel, we will find a new and much more attractive way of living and working and growing. And we will drive out of the terrible recession we see around the world from the COVID economy in a sustainable way. So let me now turn to the questions. And let me begin with Dr. Kim. And if you could tell us, Dr. Kim, about the transportation landscape, how that's evolving to meet the Paris climate goals, and how Hyundai is setting itself along a way which is different from other automakers' efforts to meet these goals.
Okay, thank you. Well, we know that the transportation sector is the fourth most gas emitting sector. So we know that we are responsible for it. But today, transportation sector, especially the automotive industry, is having a very difficult time because we are ruled by very strict CO2 regulation. For example, in Europe, this year we have 95 grams CO2 per kilometer. And you may see a lot of reports that most of the automotive OEMs cannot meet this regulation, and we have to pay a lot of penalty. This is only one part. And what we are facing today is that a lot of NGOs tell that we have to ban ICE vehicles by 2035 because one vehicle produced, it will last for 15 years. So if we want to be ultimate zero CO2 in 2050, we have to stop making ICE cars by 2035. Now the governments have to see what happens then. So can automotive industry provide so much zero emission vehicles to the market? And what kind of infrastructure is needed for that reason? So this is a big consideration, and we have to have a good plan to realize the 2035 zero emission vehicle into the market in a mass amount. And we have to prepare that, all government and also automotive companies. So Hyundai is preparing that with battery electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles both. And I will have a chance to introduce more about our strategy later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim. Mayor Vapore, the cities are responsible for around 3/4 of the world's emissions. And Helsinki, under your leadership, is committed to a strategy which is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So could you tell us about the challenges Helsinki faces in pursuit of that strategy and what measurable progress you're seeing?
Actually, our strategy is not only aligned with the UN SDGs, we are actually very proud to be the second city in the world after the city of New York, which committed itself to submit a voluntary local review to the United Nations directly concerning the SDGs. And we have working together with the city of New York quite a lot in order to encourage other cities around the world to do the same. And actually, I'm very glad that today I think that we have something like 200 cities globally who have followed our path. Maybe the main target was to create a common language with cities around the world in order to really advance serious SDG action together. Of course, there are a lot of challenges there. I think the biggest one is the holistic leadership needed, especially when you discuss the idea of SDGs, which cover more or less all the big challenges in mankind today. You need a holistic leadership, and you need to understand that there is no individual program or action which will help alone, and also that all levels of city activities and decisions need to be addressed and included in order to succeed. Linked to that, you could say that another challenge is of course the level of expertise needed. For example, in climate issues, our expertise is very good, as also in some other SDG areas, but we also face the challenge that not everyone is able to make the connection between their work and the SDGs. Measurable progress we are seeing. For the first, we have already today been able to reduce the emissions by 28% in the city since 1990. And actually, I think that the figure is even more impressive because the city has grown all the time. So if you put it in per capita terms, we have been today able to reduce emissions already by 45% per capita since 1990. And I think that is maybe the most important success we have made. We've also been able to invest towards urban rail mobility and combine those investments with new residential development projects to make growing the city greener. And then maybe my last point here is that we are testing sustainable and innovative urban mobility projects such as drone delivery services and self-driving buses in scale.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And Andreas, your firm Uniper introduced a new decarbonisation strategy, announcing a commitment to exit coal-fired power generation in Germany by 2038 at the latest. What ultimately propelled the company toward this decision?
There are probably two things which really convinced us that this is the right thing to go in that direction. As you highlighted already at your opening speech, the climate change, the rising temperature leads to decarbonization, where a lot of countries have committed to being net zero in 2050 latest. And of course, this is what we are seeing as well. And if you're looking at our society or at Germany, then we see that most of the emissions are coming from three sectors. That's industry, transportation, and buildings, and of course the generation of electricity, where we are playing a part. This is about 30%. So we need sector coupling to decarbonize our society. And actually decarbonization will only work with two levers, with electrification and of course with greener gases and hydrogen. And so as we were sitting together, what can we do? And if we believe in sector coupling, we should do our own homework as well. And we decided to switch from our coal-fired and lignite-fired assets as fast as we can to more gas-fired assets, which are, compared to lignite, 2.5 times more efficient. And then, of course, with green gases and hydrogen, ultimately convert these assets to a net zero CO2 emissions. Leading the example, paving the way, transforming our industry, and of course, starting the evolution in that sector, because I believe in evolutions, not revolutions. And that was basically the assumptions and the convictions we started to our journey into a more CO2-free world.
Thank you very much. Let us now turn to the role of clean mobility in creating a sustainable future. Dr. Kim, what is Hyundai's two-track strategy for its clean mobility offering? And specifically, how is Hyundai positioning itself in the fast-growing global electric vehicle market?
Okay, let me explain you about our two-track strategy. So in the future, there will be only two powertrain, which is really zero emission. That is fuel cell and battery. And Hyundai is also focusing very strongly in the battery electric vehicle. So we have launched our electric car brand, which is called Ioniq. And under this name, we will, supply the vehicles with dedicated platform. But what we believe is that only battery vehicles is not enough. We have to have also fuel cell, because we don't think battery cars can cover all the mobility sector. So we need passenger cars, large sedan, large SUVs, trains, trucks, and also ships. So in the usage, what kind of mobile device we need, there will be some areas where battery is more efficient and other areas where fuel cell will be more efficient. And you have to also think of the geometric factor. In the future, we are targeting zero CO2. That means we all have to use renewable energy at the end. And for countries like Korea and even Germany, we say that we are energy importing company. And in the future, we have to import renewable energy also. And it can be, in which form? It will be hydrogen, mostly, I think. So in a country like Korea, if we want to power electric vehicles, we have to produce electricity from hydrogen. So these are two factors we think which will be, characterizing where the battery electric vehicles will be used and fuel cell. Today, many people think that fuel cell vehicles are only for really big trucks, but I don't think it's the case, because as fuel cell become more, reaches more cost reduction and come to the relatively almost same price as the battery system, it will be also be used in passenger cars. It's like gasoline and diesel in the internal combustion engine era, because diesel was normally used in trucks, but many passenger cars have been using diesel engines in the quite past before there was a Dieselgate. So I think battery and fuel cell be complementary, and we have to use both technology in the future. And we have to think, if there is all battery vehicles only in the whole country, how can you have to find a way how to supply the electric power. So I think that will not be a efficient way. We should use both energy in different forms. Thank you.
Mayor Vapavori, the pandemic made an immediate impact on urban mobility. Use of public transport down, automobile use has recovered faster, cycling and micromobility have increased. As you said earlier this year, returning to normal does not mean returning to the pre-COVID situation. If we're not returning to normal, where are we going?
I think no one knows. But maybe my main point is that the world's greatest transformations, climate change, aging, digitalization, urbanization, most of them will only be accelerated and highlighted by the COVID crisis. So the COVID crisis will not disrupt but accelerate change we have already seen take place. So returning from COVID means that we will progress to a new era marked by these global transformations and accelerated by COVID. I think in urban mobility, this will mean acceleration of at least intelligent solutions, data-based development and utilization of AI. So use of public transportation will go up again due to our growing ability to guarantee safe travel by using AI and data to plan routes, schedules and on-demand services. Micro mobility will keep increasing and cities learn to manage it better, and mobility will be seen more as a service and less as an infrastructure investment.
Andreas, Uniper is betting big on gas and down the road on hydrogen energy. In a couple of decades, you said, hydrogen could be as important for the world as oil and gas was in the past. As I understand it, Uniper's moves are not limited to energy production and distribution. They're also oriented towards mobility. So what does the medium and near-term future look like for Uniper's forays into transport?
Yeah, thank you for that great question. As Dr. Kim already outlined, the transportation sector is one of the biggest emitters of CO2 and poses, of course, a potential for us as well. We as Uniper, we are already since a couple of years in electric charging stations, mobile ones, and of course gas filling stations, because we see the world pretty much aligned with our distinguished colleague from Hyundai. We see that there will definitely some room for electric cars, especially in the urban areas. Having electric cars with distances of 50, 100, 150 kilometers on average can be easily done with battery charging and infrastructure is there. And in case of heavy loads and long distances, I see a lot of room for liquefied gas and hydrogen in the near end, because that's a very efficient way to drive vehicles for long distance. So in the rural area, I see more need of hydrogen and hydrogen filling stations. On the other hand, we should not underestimate the huge amount of electrical energy we would need for the charging infrastructure to propel these cars. If you assume that the latest forecasts are right, we nearly have to add 50% of our energy from electrical means for charging infrastructure to filling up the batteries. This is requiring a huge infrastructure. Only a couple of electric cars can already double the energy demands of small villages, not to speak about the infrastructure in the cities which needs prepared for that. So we are looking at that with interest. We are really open from a technology point of view. We believe there is not an easy answer to a complex question, what is the right method to propel transportation into the new era. So we are betting on electrification and on green gases and hydrogen in the same way as Hyundai is looking at that.
Let's take a pause for a moment and turn to Adina Valian, the European Commissioner of Transport, who was kind enough to join us earlier from Brussels. We're delighted now to bring into the discussion the European Commissioner for Transport, Adina Vălean, who joins us from Brussels. Hello and welcome, Commissioner.
Hello to everyone. Hello, Professor Stern.
I'd like to ask you 2 or 3 questions, if I may, Commissioner. First, about the European Green Deal. It's really ambitious, but that's what, of course, the challenge of climate change demands. Can you tell us something about that Green Deal and also how you will be able to get the countries of Europe to work together on this?
Well, you are right. The Green Deal, it is ambitious, but I think it's absolutely needed. And we committed as European Commission, together with the member states, to deliver to the citizens a more sustainable future. So this is about in the Green Deal. But the transformation in the society are going to be tremendous. If I am to talk only about my sector, the transport sector, the contribution in order to reach climate neutral 2050 continent would be 90% reduction of CO2 emissions. And that's huge. Of course, the complexity of the sector is also to be recognized because we have different modes of transportation. The possibilities for each mode to act, to decarbonize are different. The distances between and the needs are completely different because it's one way if we look at, the road transportation or rail, and another is if we look at maritime, at shipping, because there we know that the differences and the efforts needs to be are very important. So this is about our sector, but the member states, because you asked me, I mean the European Union member states, they are committed. They committed to this goal. Of course, it's challenging for us because the differences between the member states are huge in terms of where they are in decarbonizing the transport. There are more advanced ones and others who still have problems with the infrastructure, which is old, which is not digitalized. So this will be a challenge, but I think with flexibility and solidarity, we can overcome these obstacles and work together to make a change.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And I understand that there's a strategy on sustainable and smart mobility coming soon. Could you tell us how that the ideas in the strategy might be able to deliver the kind of transport ecosystem that we will need in Europe?
It's true. Before the end of the year, I will present this strategy for sustainable and smart mobility. Now, I'm not going to go into the details. I'm keeping them for the announcement of the strategy. But nevertheless, I must tell you that our vision, it's based on the fact that there is no silver bullet for decarbonizing and smartening the transport sector. We need a basket of measures, from cleaner vehicles to alternative fuels infrastructure, also to increase the efficiency in each transport mode. And also I'm putting a lot of emphasis on multimodality, because if we will be able to develop the multimodality for passengers and freight, then this is a way for the future in decarbonizing and making the transport more efficient and more sustainable.
Thank you very much. And can you tell us something around the combination of electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles? Would you see both of those as combining together in the smart mobility?
Yes, to be honest, I myself am looking in a rather neutral way towards the technologies, because I would say the effort we need to do to decarbonize is so huge, and we need results soon, so that we will have to look according to each transportation mode to what is more feasible and what is there and would help us very quickly. Now, for the zero-emission vehicles or low-emission vehicles, we have to find the right incentives for the deployment of these vehicles. And for that, for example, we need a combination from pricing instruments to financing, for example, the recharging and refueling stations infrastructure, in order to help and encourage citizens to buy the electric vehicles. In the future, I see for the cars, vans, for transport inside the cities, the buses, the delivery vans, this should be electrical. But if we look, for example, at transport of goods, of heavy-duty vehicles, there I think, for example, that hydrogen is going to play a very important role for the future. So I would say each segment with its best technological solution.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And what will the Commission do to encourage the technological innovation that we need, both in the technologies, actually, and the policy innovation as well?
Well, I'm putting a lot of hope in the Horizon Europe program and also InvestEU to support innovation and programs, to finance programs for innovation. We are encouraging and supporting the joint undertakings for various topics. And I do believe that we need to bring all the stakeholders together to help innovation and the deployment of innovative solutions. And for that, for example, I do believe in alliances along the value chains. And for example, we are establishing, as we did with the battery alliances, we have this clean hydrogen alliance. And I'm also thinking to establish an alliance called along a value chain for the low emission fuels, because we need to bring everyone in order to make sure this technologies will develop and be deployed on the market. So this would be, I would say, an angle to tackle the innovation. But apart from that, I would say that we need a lot of innovation regarding the data solutions. And for this, for example, we need an European data space, because there are a lot of startups, and I expect innovation in business solutions. For example, multimodal ticketing, we need sharing of data and make it open in order to allow innovative companies to come up with innovative solutions which would be used in transport. If we think, for example, at the drone sector also, and its use for commercial purposes, if we look at, as I said already, multi-ticketing to have a seamless journey from point A to B when you exchange various modes of transportation. And also for freight, as I said, I'm betting on multimodality, but for this we would need state-of-the-art terminals. And here, of course, we need, based again on data and digital solutions, which would be innovative, would be available, and a business case, a new business case, if we manage to make the best use of the data existing in transport modes now.
Thank you. And this is my last question. Europe, I think it's fair to say, is out in front. It's pioneering in sustainable and smart mobility. What lessons are you learning that you could be shared globally with others who would like to go down this route?
Well, I think if you put yourself a target, if you commit to a target of reduction of the emissions, then you can develop the road to reach that target. So I think it's important, if we are committed to the Paris Agreement, if we commit to work through our policies together with industry, with stakeholders, to reach an objective. I think this is very important, and you could see this already in Europe, and the ambition is growing. And I think we'll be able to deliver a more sustainable and environment and climate future for our citizens and for our industries.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you for the time, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you very much.
Let us now turn to the question of partnerships public-private, and of course, private-private. So, Mayor Vapor, how is the city partnering with business leaders and other governmental entities to incubate new ideas and community approaches that advance clean mobility?
I think that one of the biggest strengths of the city of Helsinki, which we are building on, is that we are of the right size and functional enough in order to enable tests and pilots and demonstrations on systemic scale. So I do think that I'm actually the first person on Earth who have been receiving a lunch delivered by a drone in an urban environment. And we are aiming at other that kind of tests. So as giving the city of Helsinki and the whole urban environment and like offering that as a test bed for private companies when they need to test something in an urban environment which is like big enough to be called a city, having all the features of a city, but at the same time being small enough in order to make that happen. I'm sure that most of those kind of innovations also in the field of urban mobility, you can't test them in global metropolis like Paris or London or Tokyo or New York, but you need to start from smaller cities. And that is something which we are working very much on. Then we have a company, Forum Virium, a innovation company fully owned by the city of Helsinki, which brings together businesses and end user cases in tests and projects on a smaller case all the time. And then maybe the third example, which I'd like to mention, is mobility as a service, which is actually an innovation which took place in Helsinki. So you could say it's born in Helsinki, and there we are a forerunner. But to be honest, we must do more ourselves as well in order to create a truly functional mass ecosystem in scale. So we have several ways of cooperating, especially with the business society. But you could say that in a nutshell, our philosophy is that we see the city as a platform, as an enabler, and try to create the best possible circumstances then for the private sector to utilize the infrastructure we are providing them.
Dr. Kim, Hyundai intends to spend $6.7 billion across a decade to develop its hydrogen technology. Through its partners in mobility, infrastructure, and energy, how is the company leveraging its fuel cell system to advance a hydrogen ecosystem?
Well, what we think is that many people is familiar with battery technology, but with fuel cell, not many people knows this technology at all. So what we want to do is try to, not only in the vehicle, but we want to make many industry or other sectors use fuel cell technology. So in the future, we would like to be a system provider of the fuel cell systems that the backup power industry, power generation, and other different areas where the electricity is needed, we want to provide it so that many people can experience this technology. And other is we are working with a lot of energy companies who is interested in hydrogen, and we work with logistic companies, and we work with maybe supermarket chain. The good example is our Hyundai hydrogen mobility company, which is made in Switzerland. So Swiss government have made a big tax, about $1 per kilometer driving of heavy-duty trucks. That makes the relatively expensive fuel cell truck more affordable. And we are working with Swiss logistic companies and Swiss supermarkets. And also we are working with a Swiss energy company, hydropower company, which produces electricity. And if the cost of the grid goes down below 4 cents or something, then we change this electricity to hydrogen, and we charge that hydrogen to our trucks. So we are not having any subsidy for this business model, and even we can make this business model make work. So I think this kind of cooperation could be achieved in different areas, and especially we need a large hydrogen infrastructure. Now, Korean government is supporting us very strongly. Korean government target is to have 310 stations by 25 and 23, and it's I think it's possible when government has a strong willingness to do so. Many people say that hydrogen station is expensive, but if you compare this cost to other social infrastructure, it is not so expensive. So we should think over what is needed, and especially if we really want to ban ICE cars by 2035, we have to be well prepared for the new zero emission vehicles come into this country or big cities. And we have to plan very good because we only have 15 years. But we don't have to be frightened because Korean government planned in 2000, maybe 18, 19, and they are already achieving by 23 more than 300 stations. And Korea, a small country, will need only about 400 stations to naturally grow without subsidy. So we want to show that kind of example, with Korean government and Korean energy companies and Korean also with Hyundai. And I think we are getting a lot of questions for advice from other countries also, but I think we can make a good example for all. And we have to be familiar with this technology. So I want to use, and I want a lot of different companies, using fuel cell and hydrogen technology, and we will support all our strength for that. Thank you.
Andrea, in addition to your executive role with Uniper, you serve as a member of Germany's National Hydrogen Council. So what are German public and private sector leaders seeking to achieve with a national hydrogen strategy? From sustained R&D investment, the expansion of fueling infrastructure, what could a European framework for a functioning hydrogen market look like?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. As we in Uniper are seeking partnerships with companies like GE or Siemens Energy to look at our assets and how to jointly transform our assets into a hydrogen technology, I think the government has the same challenge. To start an economy about hydrogen and around hydrogen is a huge undertaking. Money aside, around 5 billion for hydrolysis and 2 billion for international developments, but the right framework needs to be developed. And I think the German approach to doing it jointly with NGOs, industry, policymakers to define the framework, how to make that kickstarting in an effective manner, I think it's a very excellent one. And this is really what is discussed. So how to start the economy, how to subsidize it, because I think we all know to start a hydrogen economy, we have to use subsidies as we have done it with renewables. From a first point of view, it will not be cost effective, and we have to discuss that. Just the 5 billion of European or German investments in hydrolysis will maybe cover 10 to 15% of the hydrogen needs in 2030. So a big part needs to be imported. And if it will be imported, then of course the question is what hydrogen will be imported. It has to be CO2 free, but they are different colors. So you need a certification scheme, you need infrastructure for that. Just to give you one example, the infrastructure for gas in Germany is not allowed to transport hydrogen in significant amounts because it was never foreseen for that. It's just not in the law and in the regulation. So discussing the framework, how to make that happen, how to store it, how to transport it, what price tags we're putting on that, how we distribute that, and how we really kickstart that, that's actually the base of the discussion. And it's the same thing for the European level. The European Green Deal foresees a big amount of investments and initiatives around hydrogen, but here as well, we have to discuss on European level as well what kind of allow. For instance, OPEX, operational expenses, as subsidies are not foreseen at the moment. But everybody knows if you want to run a hydrolysis asset on peak power, if renewable energy is there in vast amounts, then of course it will not run constantly. So we have a lot of things to discuss, but actually it's the regulations around that and the kickstarting and the using the subsidies in an intelligent manner that we really making fast progress. That's the core discussions of the Hydrogen Council, which concerns not only Germany from my point of view, but whole Europe. Thank you.
Let's now turn to a discussion of innovations in technology and innovations in policy. Dr. Kim, which technological innovations are powering Hyundai's fuel cell vision 2030?
Well, I would like to say it's a little bit general things. If we, when a technology comes to the market, we need 3 steps, I think. First, it is performance. We have shown that the performance works like the previous technology, what is substituted. And then we have to see whether the durability meets the requirement. That is a second phase. And third is the cost down, which can be affordable to all public people. So I think the passenger car fuel cell technology is at the 3rd stage of cost reduction. Now we have tasked to reduce the cost in this sector. For heavy-duty trucks and for ships, maritime application, we can show that it functions, but they require a lot of long durability, like 1 million driving range or 30,000 hours of durability, or even 50,000. So we are now working on the durability side for the truck and maritime application. And now there are, in the industry, there are 300 companies who is working on, aviation with zero emission. So we are also working for that kind of technology because we announced that we will mass produce the UAM, urban air mobility, by 28. So we are, being challenged on that. But in the aviation area, we are in the performance, realizing performance side. So it is a very early stage, and we have to work on it. So what we know and what we think is we have to use only renewable in the future. And that will be only in battery or fuel cell, maybe other things, supercapacitor, but that is the only technology we have, and we have to improve these technologies. And I think in near future, it will be realized. It is only a matter of time. Because when I started my career in Hyundai in 2003, I never even imagined that I can mass produce a passenger car with fuel cell. Our durability was only 800 hours then. But now it is no problem to achieve 5,000 hours or more. So it is only a matter of time. Human can do anything. So what we really want is do not dig into the ground to find the fossil fuels, but let's see the sun, and we can use the sunshine, which is really sustainable. So we will do our best to provide that kind of technology. And I hope many people finds out that fuel cell technology is capable of doing these things, and we want this technology not only in Japan, Korea, or China. We want this technology also be deeply researched in US and in Europe and everywhere in the world. So I think we have the technology. We don't have to fear about that. We only have to change our mind to transform to the renewables. And early days, it will be not economical. But in the future, I'm sure that it will be economical because every time when I say something, people, we are talking about living or die, yeah, with this temperature, climate problem. But people always come back to the economical problem. But this battery and fuel cell is in a very early stage, and it has a plenty time to compete with current technologies. And the work we are doing is let this time come more shorter than we expected. And I think we'll do it. Yeah, thank you.
Mayor Vapore, how are you and other green city mayors using policy as a tool to affect change? In and beyond Helsinki, what are some of the other city level innovations in clean mobility that excite you?
Policy is certainly one of the basic tools of any city leader. However, I believe more in creating systemic changes than policy. Although you of course need both. I think that the power of cities is that they are pragmatic. The power of cities is also that they manage such a vast portion of people's everyday lives. And this lead to the conclusion that you really need to be holistic. You can't just concentrate on advancing cycling or drones. You must create a holistic ecosystem that will drive people to making the right choice because they want to, not because they are forced to do that. I'm excited of many things, but if you just mention some, I'm excited about data's urban mobility infrastructure. I'm excited about mobility as a service instead of infrastructure. And I'm excited about creating an urban mobility ecosystem that does not solve a single mobility challenge, but serves as a platform for multiple of sustainable and practical choices for the citizens.
Andreas, what do you see as the most significant regulatory barriers to achieving society level decarbonisation goals? For instance, what will it take to modernise and scale hydrogen infrastructure, such as charging stations for automobile and heavy duty transport?
I think there are a few hurdles in the regulations which we need to at least adapt. Starting with already mentioned that of course the normal pipelines we have are not allowed to transport hydrogen in significant amounts, and if you want to decarbonize buildings where heating and cooling is an issue, or we want to use more fuel cells in buildings, then of course we need to definitely remove that barrier. On the other hand, we have some issues in Germany, especially using renewable energy for hydrolysis, because there's a kind of tax on it. We call it EEG. So you're paying for the energy coming from renewable sources double if you're using it for production of hydrogen, which makes the whole business case not really work. And of course, every workaround at the moment, what we are discussing, is in a way that no private investor would invest in that. You're not investing into an asset which runs for 20 years if you have to ask for an exception every year. So you have to get stable environmental conditions and financial conditions to invest in that, because everything what we are doing now has to stand the litmus test that it will make money for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I understand what Dr. Kim is saying, that at the moment, not all of these technologies are already in the money and making profits. But I'm a strong believer that, first of all, innovations can fix that over time. We have seen that with renewables and solar and wind. And secondly, the sustainable evolution will only be successful if at the end we are bringing the cost down significantly. That's the cost, if we are fairly accounting it, are cheaper than burning some fossil fuels, what we are doing at the moment.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And let me ask the last question of this session, the headline question, to our host from Hyundai, Dr. Kim. What does the future hold for clean mobility?
Oh, well, the conclusion is, not changing. We have to move all, we have to make our mobility devices all working with renewable. It could be hydrogen, electricity, or synthetic fuels. But at the end, the conclusion is, finalized, I think. And we are all going for that direction. It is only the matter of when it will be realized in economic way. But first, I want to say that let's forget economy for quite a time, because we need support from the government, and we know the target, we can make it economic. But every technology needs time, and we have to go through the Death Valley, and we need support because it is a very young, it's like, a baby who is trying to walk, and there's an athlete who can, run 100 meters in 9 seconds, and let them compete. It doesn't make sense. So I think we need some waiting. We have to wait for the technology to grow, but we know the right way, so let's keep going. Well, I am working in this area for 17 years now, and many people questioned me, why do you do hydrogen and fuel cell? Doesn't make sense. It is not, efficient way to do it. But today, now many countries, Germany, EU, Russia, Spain, all had made their hydrogen roadmaps. And we know that this is the only way we can achieve a full renewable society. So, the end is clear, and we will just go for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim. And with that, we bring our discussion to a close. I'd like to thank our panelists for their time and deep and valued insights. Dr. Kim, Mayor Vapafiore, Andreas Schierenbeck, thank you all. You are pioneers. We're also grateful to the European Commissioner of Transport, Adina Valian, for joining us earlier. Dr. Kim, we extend our gratitude and appreciation to you and to Hyundai Motor Company for hosting this conversation and for your long-term commitment to a cleaner, more sustainable mobility landscape. To our audience, both with and beyond the Bloomberg New Economy community, thank you for joining us. Goodbye for now.